I wasn't motioning to use this.
All right then, I think we are ready. It's 6 o'clock and I'm gonna call to order the regular village board meeting for East Dundee. Today is Monday, June 15th at 6 o'clock. Bronco, would you take the roll, please?
Sure. Trustee Sauter?
Here.
Trustee Saviano is absent. Trustee Kunzig?
Present.
Trustee Mahoney?
Present.
Trustee Oakland?
Here.
Trustee Guma is here. Trustee Guma is absent, and President Pearson is also absent.
Okay. With that, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Trustee Mahoney, I was informed that we need a motion and a second to make you pro tem.
Okay.
I will move to make Trustee Mahoney the temporary board president.
Second.
You just do a voice vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you. Thanks for keeping us on the straight and narrow. Is there anyone here for public comments?
I did not receive any
Okay.
forms.
Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there anything that anybody wants to remove from the consent agenda before we get a motion? Any of the line items?
Nope.
Okay, take a motion.
I will move to approve the regular village board meeting minutes dated June 1st, 2026. I will also move to accept the warrants list in the amount of $381,813.07. I will move to approve a resolution appointing Franco Badalicio, is that close? As
Say it
interim
out loud.
village administrator, subject to an interim village administrator employment agreement. I will move to approve a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding with the Village of West Dundee related to the coordination of long-term maintenance for the Fox River art sculptures. I will move to approve resolution approving procurement of professional engineering from Gerald L. Hines and Associates, Inc. And I will move to approve a resolution accepting a bid and approving a contract with A-Lamp Concrete Contractors, Inc.
Second.
Any conversation, discussion on any of the items on the agenda? Bronco, for the record, would you like to pronounce your last name?
Oh, sure. Thanks. Botalico.
Botalico.
Botalico. That's
Thank you.
majestic.
Call.
Trustee Sauter?
Yes.
Trustee Kunzig?
Yes.
Trustee Mahoney?
Yes.
And Trustee Oakland?
Yes.
Cool, and then moving on to other agenda items, we have presentation and discussion by Civil Tech Engineering regarding the village's bike and pedestrian plan, and complete street policy.
Yeah.
Hi, Caleb.
Hi, I wanted to introduce Lissa Sweeney, who's been here a couple of times, but she's about to give another awesome presentation. And this has been a project that staff has been working with Civil Tech on for over a year now. So very excited to present this to the board. So without further ado.
Wonderful. Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me here again to talk about the bicycle and pedestrian plan. So I believe it was in November of last year was the last time that we were here and kind of gave an update on the status of the bike and pedestrian plan. So now we are kind of in the final stages. So we have the draft plan together and wanted to walk through providing a recap of what was discussed previously and then updates that have been made in the last 6 months to finalize the plan.
Control L if you want to screen.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you.
Beautiful.
All right. Okay, so then wanted to run through just a number of items, provide a quick kind of project overview, touch on some existing conditions, which we've talked about in a previous meeting, but just as a refresher, as well as community engagement. Then we will dive into more of the network recommendations, so both the bicycle and pedestrian networks, and then looking forward to implementation, phasing of the plan, as well as the complete streets policy. Yep. So a brief project overview, so just taking a step back again. Bike and pedestrian plan, really this is a roadmap to prioritize future projects. So it provides a guidebook as grants become available or as future resurfacing projects are coming about. It provides kind of that guidebook to see what projects should be prioritized and implemented by the village. It's just concept level design. So it doesn't get into design specifications yet. There would need to be engineering feasibility study for shared use paths, for example, for intersection improvements. But it does look at best practices, menu of options, as well as general feasibility for these different improvements. The project timeline, so as Caleb mentioned, we kicked off this project last year, around May or June. Since that time, we held 2 steering committee meetings. We had a public survey and a pop-up meeting in the fall of last year. And then I was here providing a project update in November. And we had a community open house a few months ago where we got feedback from the public on the draft network. And so overall background goals, really, we're aiming to improve safety, enhance connectivity for people walking, biking, and rolling throughout the village. And it really builds on both the existing bicycle and pedestrian network as well as other village initiatives. So referencing other plans that have been created over the last handful of years, including a riverfront master plan, the comprehensive plan. So trying to tie some of those together. In addition to safety and connectivity, also looking at developing standard bicycle pedestrian facilities throughout East Dundee so that they're easily recognizable and that there are those kind of design standards established, as well as a complete streets policy, which really establishes a process for considering all roadway users on transportation projects. And then no plan is complete without having kind of that clear path for implementation. So we do have that prioritization and phasing plan as part of the overall implementation section. This is a refresher, so this was included in the previous presentation, just highlighting a few existing conditions. Here we have the existing kind of a bicycle network, which is primarily the Fox River Trail. And then here we have the existing sidewalk network. So you see in blue where sidewalk exists today, or at least as of probably about 6 months ago, and then sidewalk gaps in red. And then really basing all the recommendations in safety improvements. We looked at crashes specifically, I think it's over the last 9 years or so. Where you'll see biking and walking crashes on this map, as well as those specifically that were fatalities. For community engagement, so we did have a public survey open last summer and fall, where there was a brief questionnaire as well as an interactive map where community members could drop pins and add comments. So we received almost 200 survey responses, which was really great to see and allowed us to kind of hone in on the types of improvements that the community is interested in, as well as specific locations. So there was 55 interactive map comments. We also held 2 steering committee meetings, and we had a bike tour following the first meeting. So again, we were able to see kind of firsthand the challenges and opportunities throughout the village when looking at a potential bike network. So a lot of aspects that you can't really, grasp just looking at aerials in terms of topography changes or locations that might feel unsafe, but there haven't been, crashes noted there. So this provided us more of that firsthand experience. Then we also had a pop-up meeting where we were tabling at Oktoberfest last year. We promoted the survey further, and then we just recently had that public open house. So there was kind of that gap in engagement from fall of last year to kind of early spring this year, and that was when we were really gathering all of the input, analyzing the various data sets we have available, coordinating with the village, and developing those network recommendations. So what we heard, priority improvements, improving safety at intersections was probably the top comment that was received. Also establishing connections for walking, biking, rolling, specifically to key destinations. There were a number of challenging crossings that were identified. Fox River Trail in Maine being probably the top location that was referenced. Other locations along Barrington, a number of them downtown near Williams, Jackson River, and then also along Higgins. Desired sidewalks and paths. A lot of these, I guess it was kind of a mixture. Some of these are kind of downtown around the depot area, and others are along these larger east-west stretches where there just isn't connectivity currently for biking or walking. Other concerns were challenging sightlines downtown, wayfinding, truck routing, discussion around regulations for golf carts and e-bikes, bike parking, and a desire for regional connectivity. So we really tried to take all these into consideration in developing the plan, and most if not all of these are addressed in recommendations in the plan. So then getting into some of the recommendations, we primarily focused on 4 facility types: shared use paths, bike lanes, marked shared lanes, and sidewalks. So shared use paths are those kind of 8 to 10 feet paths that allow for that bidirectional travel that are adjacent to roadways. So not specifically trails or Fox River Trail, but those that kind of run parallel to a roadway. Then bike lanes, which are the dedicated on-street space for bikes, and then marked shared lanes, and that's typically along lower speed roadways, more residential, where the bicyclists share the same space as cars. And so I'll say for all of these that it's best practice to move any facilities for people walking or biking off the road. So that was kind of the view that we took, where if there was right of way, and if there was a higher speed roadway, then it's recommended to kind of remove the facility from the street, or at least provide a dedicated space if feasible. We also looked at intersection improvements. So in the network recommendations, we have a number of intersections identified, and for those we utilize this kind of toolbox looking at pedestrian signals, curb bump outs, refuge islands, crosswalks, crossing signs, and wayfinding signage. And here we have the recommended bike and pedestrian network. And so you'll see, I was giving kind of a brief overview. So we have those shared use paths in purple, bike lanes in green, marked shared lanes in yellow, and then sidewalks in blue. And so again, those shared use paths are the facilities that are 8 to 10 feet moved off of the roadway. And you can see those are primarily along these IDOT routes, other major corridors where it's not safe to have any sort of facility on the roadway itself. And then we have bike lanes along a couple locations, primarily Barrington and North. So that would be a dedicated space for bicyclists. And that's because specifically along Barrington, it's not safe for the majority of the route to have bicyclists sharing the same space as those driving, just given the truck routing and current traffic on those streets. And then north was more so connecting it both kind of between the Fox River Trail, and then there's that kind of pedestrian bridge that connects to the west. So it would be an appropriate route to have a dedicated facility. And then the Marshall lanes, you'll notice, are kind of on more of those residential routes, still providing, connecting to key destinations. So a lot of them connect to parks, schools, almost to the, I guess, the library, other public facilities, and then also a lot of kind of water and downtown. And so, again, those are more lower speed streets where it's appropriate to have kind of mixing of cars and bikes. But with that being said, part of the recommendations are designating consistent signage and street markings so that it's very clear that these are streets where those driving could expect to see bicyclists. So that's also strategic in that we don't want to have like marked shared lanes necessarily everywhere, because you want to really you want those driving to know where to expect bicyclists. And so we have kind of key connection routes. And then we have sidewalks, sidewalk improvements as part of the recommended pedestrian network. And so these primarily fill sidewalk gaps near downtown, other key destinations, as well as access between and within neighborhoods. So we did see, from the survey results too, that people not only want to walk kind of to and from downtown or the Fox River Trail, but also within neighborhoods. And so there are some recommended sidewalk improvements kind of connecting to those key destinations again. So see that kind of connecting to Lions Park, and then as well as downtown, and then between kind of the schools up there, Bonnie Dundee. I think comparing this to what we had shared during the board meeting in November, there are a few additional sidewalk recommendations in here. So thinking of what's kind of changed since then, I think the connections to Lion Park is newer since that time, as well as a few of those connections downtown, those sidewalk gaps that are being filled. Also were a result of feedback and discussions that we heard. And then just from the bike network, kind of taking that perspective between what we saw in November and then now, there are some additions. So the marked shared lanes that are along Water Street, kind of getting downtown, that has also been added, as well as I think the bike lanes were refined since we spoke last time. So then once we had a draft network created, the next step was to figure out kind of how do we prioritize these different routes and improvements and look towards implementation. And so we established a handful of prioritization criteria that we discussed with the steering committee, presented at the public meeting, and that focused on connectivity, safety, walkability, feasibility, which was a little bit more on the phasing end, and then community input. So we took a fairly quantitative approach to kind of scoring each corridor based on a number of criteria. And then once we had that, we worked closely with village staff to refine it based on what kind of made sense, taking into account village priorities as well as additional input. And so from that, we have the network prioritization, and it's categorized, and then the circles on here are also the intersection improvements, categorized into high, medium, and low priority. You'll see on here that it's primarily high and medium. There are some low that I think are a little bit more within the communities themselves or don't connect directly to key destinations. But most of the network noted is high and medium priority. And so I guess digging into this a little bit further, this is what it looks like in the plan itself, where again, every corridor is defined by the facility type, jurisdiction, an estimated cost, prioritization level, and then phasing. And so prioritization, it takes into account those criteria that we were just looking at, whereas phasing looks at the agency coordination needed, jurisdiction, and cost, recognizing so like tier 1 is easier to implement than tier 2, or tier 3 might be more of those grant opportunities for improvements. There'd be a higher cost associated with it, and additional coordination. So you'll see a lot of those marked shared lanes, for example, are tier 1 because that's kind of pavement markings and signage versus more extensive potential right-of-way impacts, and adding in distinct facilities. And so I guess in just looking at this, the high priority items or recommendations are kind of that bike lane along Barrington, and then the shared use paths along the IDOT routes, Dundee, Higgins, Penny, and then also 3rd Street from the trail to around the Carpentersville Middle School. And then we looked also at phasing for sidewalks, and just recognizing that, right, they kind of might move independently from another, looking at bike facilities and sidewalks in kind of 2 different ways. And so most of these are high and medium priority. The ones that are high are kind of a mixture of filling in the gaps downtown, as well as connecting some of those key destinations, Bonnie Dundee, for example. And then we have intersections. So this also shows, again, kind of the prioritization, recommended phasing tier, and then the potential improvement. So you can see for each location noted the different type of improvements that are both recommended as well as kind of initial vetting of what would be feasible along these corridors. And in addition to the overall network, we did also have a number of other planning considerations outlined in the plan, and these address some of those other topics that came up kind of on that, what we heard in the survey slide, one of which is wayfinding. So recommending consistent wayfinding throughout the village. We've included within the plan kind of best practices, and a recommendation for what that signage would look like, additional destinations that could be noted on signage. We get into trailhead parking a little bit, so this came up a number of times in the steering committee, and then in village discussions, just that accessing the Fox River Trail would be good to have dedicated locations for parking. And so we looked at locations that might be recommended, either parcels that might be available or in future development, as well as like parking near some of the parks downtown. And then bicycle parking. So also looking at additional locations to park bikes, which we have heard is also of interest and provides that opportunity for greater connectivity. Right, so there is a number of parking opportunities downtown, for example, but as you get a little bit further out, there's not dedicated parking, at least not that people are aware of. And so looking at opportunities to increase those bike racks, and then there's, locations identified in the plan. So I will switch gears a little bit and touch on the Complete Streets policy. And we spoke about this a little bit in November, but just kind of giving an overall overview, Complete Streets policies are becoming more common practice, where you'll see, right, in 2000, it was pretty sparse, whereas in 2020, there's over 1,500 jurisdictions with policies. And this really just establishes both a commitment to prioritizing all roadway users in transportation projects and transportation decisions, and then also kind of defines what that process looks like. And so it establishes, again, that commitment and vision applies to all projects and phases, allows only clear exceptions. So within the draft policy that we have included in the plan, those exceptions are outlined. And it really mandates or strongly recommends that coordination. This is also very helpful when working with developers. It's a policy that you can point to, and then there's an associated checklist that we started to develop with the village that can be potentially provided to developers as a tool that they need to consider potential sidewalks, shared use paths, or bike facilities when they're looking at a potential development. And so for the policy development for the village, we discussed the policy with the steering committee, kind of at both meetings. They helped establish goals early on and then kind of refine the policy during the second meeting. We also had one-on-one kind of interviews or discussions with various village departments to get an understanding of how public projects and transportation projects, kind of what that process looks like, as well as what level of involvement the fire protection district and the police department have, and what concerns they have or when they want to be involved in these projects to make sure that that they are taking into account any potential safety concerns or vehicle needs as needed, in addition to looking at bicycle and pedestrian improvements. And so from that, we have established the complete streets policy, which I don't have pulled up here, but is available in the plan itself. And the draft plan, is available on the project website. So that kind of wraps up the overview of what's been happening over the last year and specifically the last 6 months. Thank you again for the opportunity and happy to answer any questions.
With the shared use lanes that are going to go in, that doesn't change any of the existing codes for bikes to be able to use any roadway like a vehicle like they are now, correct? Mm-hmm. So like it's just kind of a raised awareness, and then obviously we want them to use those because they're safer, but they're still able, like it doesn't take anything away from them, correct?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. It is very in-depth. I was looking through this. I was very impressed. And then the tiers to what is required first as for like wanting is very helpful to see how like it shows like funding and the cost. When I used to live in Gurnee, they had a Des Plaines River Trail, which was like this really cool crushed stone, the whole thing. And it would sound like it was more like off-road, but it wasn't. When I'm seeing some of these bigger trails with connectivity on like 72, might be a good place to start, so we can start earlier.
Opposed to like a sidewalk?
Yes, like we could, it was basically, it's like a real fine gravel, and then in the future we could pave, but it might start off earlier. So that was just a thought I had. So.
Any other questions or comments? Andy, I know you were.
Yeah, I have a
Thank you for
couple.
bringing this up and
That's awesome.
kind of initiating this and working with Erica on getting the right people on board.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for putting all this, like the amount of information, so it's not just one trustee or one staff member, public works person has an opinion. It's great to see the whole community's opinion all together. And then a question on, or some comments on the parking spots that you were talking about throughout the town. It seems like there's a few of them that maybe we shouldn't use for encouraging bikes to go there. Like they are parking spots they could use, but like at the new Bartles Park, there's maybe 6 or 8 spots for kayak launching and then park usage. And I've noticed already that it's full most of the time on a nice day. So the one spot at the bottom of the map by Hager, there's actually 2 giant empty lots that aren't being used for anything, and they're right on the trail. So I think prioritizing that, put some signs up and point people there, because there's just tons of parking nobody uses. And then I think it was number 1, by the Max Freeman Park. There's not really any parking spots. There's just kind of spots along the street you could park. So not really a lot on 1 and 2, but I think pushing 7 on that. And then as far as e-bikes on the trail, I know there's new Illinois laws about e-bikes. I was wondering if we should start putting signage out for, it sounds like the main laws are if your bike goes over 27 miles an hour, it's now a motorcycle, so maybe putting some signs on the trail to let people know. A lot of people just buy their kids those bikes because they don't know any better, but if we made it more aware, there might be some parents who are like, oh, that's an actual rule. And then, I don't know how for the police department to figure out how do you actually enforce is a more difficult question, I'm sure, but I think awareness would be a good first step on that. And then for the Barrington Avenue street, that's like the top priority line that we have of getting a shared lane there. We're starting today on repaving that whole thing. So is there a way, even though we already have engineering and we're starting on it, like before we put paint down, to review, because it's maybe just the placement of the paint that we could maybe tweak and review here without having to spend money to redo the whole road down the line. So this may be a thing for staff to consider. I think they might have already considered, but just kind of raising it since we're working on it now. And then I like how we have the other plans for like Hoffman Estates and Cook County. And do you know what the next step would be for connecting to like along 72? It sounds like Hoffman is gonna put a lane that just stops right at the edge of our town. Like, is that something that we, what's the next step? Do we reach out to them and continue it, or just wait till they put it in and then pick it up later? I don't know if there's like economies of scale while they're building it to commission that same group to do a little extra stretch, even if it is crushed limestone or whatever is cheaper. I think bikers don't care, they just want a lane.
You just want to be safe.
Especially on that road. There's no way to even be on the
You
shoulder.
just can't do
Even
it.
a safe road to drive on.
Yeah.
I know for that one too, that the village, they have initiated conversations with Hoffman Estates about potential like combined grant applications at some point, and so Cook County I think is aware too. So
Awesome.
yeah.
And then the last thing I wrote down is I like the form that we have to say when a new project comes up, let's consult the plan and see how it applies. That's a totally new thing to our process, so do we know like who pulls that up, or is that something staff should be checking that, or Public Works, or the engineer, or all three? Like, what's the typical process of how we work it in and make sure it's not overlooked, I guess? Maybe that's
Or
a
how
very
does
good
that
question.
get added to the SOP, standard operating procedure, as you're starting to plan for a new
Yeah, like before
new
we quote
road
it, 'cause
upgrade?
it does seem like we'll quote it and then be like, wow, we already had numbers. It's, I wish we would have quoted it towards this, but too late now, we got the grant and we're moving forward. So yeah, just making sure it gets worked in a systematic way.
Joe, is that something that starts with you or Phil and?
Perfect combination.
Yeah, yeah. And do you have like a standard operating procedure or steps that you, as you look at a new project, on the things that you need to check off and that, if can we add this to that list of process? Okay.
And then can you opine on his question before about Barrington?
Barrington Avenue is a little challenging because it's a federally aided project, which took 4 years to get the money for and get through the process. The only thing we could do is ask to see if we could add a shared path or shared lane signage, but I don't think that was recommended in the plan, right? Since it's a steep route. So we probably want to widen Barrington Avenue, so you won't really be losing anything with the new pavement. You have to replace the curb on one side or the other, try
There's a sidewalk that pretty much does it run the whole distance
I think so.
already?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that
We both saw.
just a matter on both sides, yeah?
I wouldn't recommend biking it.
Yeah, no bikers will get on it, because
On the
walkers will be on it too.
Yeah.
I thought we said that it wasn't wide enough for a shared lane already. We
Yeah,
already
you
knew
do.
that. We'd have to increase it, yeah. Plus, then
Yeah.
there's parking on one side as well, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that's what with the, for the dedicated bike facility, you would likely remove parking or look at what that parking restrictions would look like to have an on-street facility.
Yeah, I mean, even the lowest tier is the just shared lane for awareness. I mean, that could be added without adding any extra space, not adding a lot of safety, but some awareness, but yeah, not as important since it doesn't really add as much protection with that, but yeah, I think that was it on all of my list. Yeah, anybody else?
Could we look at the cost of the shared lane signages being painted from the contractor painting the lines when they come out?
Sure.
Since they're already on site, maybe, you know, if it's a starting point of awareness, obviously we want to widen it, but if they're there, it might not be a bad idea, right? To look at the cost.
Yeah, couldn't hurt.
Scott, did you have anything? Kind of along the same line of conversation of safety, with Bonnie Dundee, a sidewalk would be lovely, but I don't see this village paying $1 million for a sidewalk along there anytime in our near future. As lovely as it would be, realistically, I don't really see it happening. So again, to try and raise the awareness, if the shared painting could be looked at the beginning and end of that. There are sidewalks from 25 to the easternmost village border in Carpentersville. And then I think there's some along the school, or they're planning on putting some along the school there on Wilmette.
Are there opportunities with Safe Route to Schools to get something like a
Yeah.
grant money to help
Yeah.
get a sidewalk
I mean,
in
that would
there?
be huge.
There's schools on either side, right?
Yeah, there's schools on either side, and same with Ravine. You know, that whole section there is a lot of little tiny roads and soft shoulders and no sidewalks and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Because there are schools on both ends, absolutely. You good?
I think you guys did an amazing job.
Yeah. Thank
It's
you
really
very much.
in-depth.
I'm
Yes,
looking forward
wonderful
to
work.
adding that and figuring out how we get this budget, some of the things budgeted. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Alrighty then. Thank you, Caleb. Then moving on to village president and board reports. Andy, do you want to start? Okay, do you have anything?
Sure. Let's see. Oh, there was a comment about just the water and the road salt. I think Phil shared a report for being in a river town, like ways for water to be not as affected by things like road salt. I was wondering, like the road salt chloride issues that were mentioned in the water report. Is that something that we follow best practices when we're salting roads, or is that something we could look at to increase or improve the water quality, or is that something that Public Works already does with salting?
So we have attended training for best management use of salt and our chemicals that are used during the snow and ice season. We do, when possible, try to incorporate those practices into our operation. Most of our runoff, all our runoff, at least in this part of the community, ends up in the Fox River, of course, during the winter season. And our storm sewer systems too, as well. So it's something we can look deeper into.
Great. That and then the, just wanting to follow up on, continuing to look into the Lake Michigan water option of whether or not it would make sense to pull that into town as a backup source. It seemed like in the same report, it was pointing out that a lot of towns are being pushed towards that, to not overpull out of the aquifers. So, sounded like our survey that we did of all of the loss that we get was, I think, 16%, and it needs to be 10. So, kind of working towards getting there in case we need that in the future. But that's it for report.
No report. No report? Matt?
I got a couple things. I want to thank Caleb and Franco for coming out. On the 4th, we did kind of a preliminary walkthrough again. Well, there was a preliminary walkthrough, but this was a little more in depth at a couple locations for shoreline planning and restoration. And it seems like we're going to get a couple drafts made up for a couple areas and just kind of reintroduce it to some of the board here. The idea is like not only to be natural, but for public use. So we're going to be looking at picnic tables and things like that so that people, if they were on the bikes, they could stop at the end of the street and have a sandwich or hang out. So kind of opening up a couple of our unused pieces of property that are municipally owned so that they can be enjoyed by all. So it was really cool. It seemed pretty promising, and I thank you guys again for coming out and keeping that thing going. And I'm going to do a shout out for my wife because we all know we have to have strong families to keep us going. So my wife was able to pull off an author fest at Depot Park. It was 16 published authors came, which is pretty cool when you think about it. So like we had the arts committee did a lot, the village did a lot to set it up, but like really cool. I seen them all come together, and it's just a lot of professionals to be bringing here. So brought a lot of people to come see them too. So that was, and I don't know if staff's going to cover the El Cardinal event at all. Do you know? All right, so it's going to go on Saturday. Friends of the Fox is doing it again. Last year it was a great event. Tons of people came. So if you're into kayaking or paddling at all, starts in Algonquin and heads on down. I think it still gets out in the same location as before, correct? By Bartles Park. Super fun event. Really easy too, even if you're not a good paddler. The river flows south, so you can kind of just float it. So if you're thinking about it, come on out. So that's it.
Cool. I will go before I talk to the rest of the staff. We had our first test Twilight Depot Market last Thursday, which, wow, we had great weather, but amazing group of, I think there were 13 new vendors, and it was extremely well received. I know Matt will have a whole bunch of recommendations as well. Matt Feck will have a whole bunch of recommendations and data for us to consider, but I was there for a little bit, and we'll see where we want to take that in the future. For next year, there's another one on July 2nd. So if you don't have anything going, it's a fun thing to do before you head out for dinner. And then I was going to shout out the Authors Fair, and great job to Kim and recruiting everybody that was there. Made a purchase myself, so I'm looking forward to reading that. And we have the Wind Down Wednesday event that was canceled due to some horrific storms. Rescheduled for July 1st. Want to thank you and your team for picking up all the additional like decorating that was going down at the depot for the 4th of July celebration. And so thanks to, is it Jerry Christensen was the one that donated it? Donated all the soldiers? And carrying out a little bit of history, they're on loan from him. And so that adds quite a bit, and a connection with the military that put threw all that up. And then I also wanted to thank Erica for your tireless and dedication to the village. And you came in to quite a fraught situation within the administration and the staff on the village, as well as the board. And we are all calm, happy people working hard and rowing in the same direction. So thank you for your leadership on that, as well as I've been a part of this for probably since 2000, probably 19 years off and on, within planning and zoning and on the board. And when you've been a part of something for so long, you kind of know who the village is, but and who we were. But you came in with a village and with a vision for the village, and you swung for the fences and thought bigger than I don't think anybody ever in East Dundee ever has. And so for that, I want to really thank you and see where we can take some of these wonderful ideas and plans that have been put in place the last few years. Plus, you're fun to work with. So thank you for everything on that. And with that, Village Attorney, any report?
I just want to say best wishes to Erica Storley, and it's been amazing working with her over these past few years. And these big projects have also kept us busy with some really interesting and very satisfying work.
Mm-hmm.
We got to know the team at East Dundee here, and they're all very amazing. And so I wish you the best. Our law firm wishes you the best, and it's been wonderful working with you.
I also want to echo that, and I want to thank President Pearson and the Board of Trustees for entrusting me with this responsibility for the next few months. It means a lot. I'm honored to keep the torch going and pass these projects moving forward, and keep the ball rolling and keep the momentum going that Erica has built for us, and keep the board's vision moving forward.
Great, thank you. Caleb?
I echo the same sentiments. There was Motor Monday, so no report other than that.
Oh yeah, let's get to Motor Monday. Yes, I forgot that. Joe?
Same thing.
Okay.
Barrington Avenue starting out for next week. Lions Park is going to be starting out next week.
Wow, great. Phil?
No report. Echo the same sentiments.
Erica?
All right, well, I just wanted to say all the thanks goes to the staff and the residents and the village board, because without everybody working collaboratively together, we wouldn't have got even half as much done as I could have possibly envisioned. So this community is extremely special, and when people put down their differences and come together and work hard to make something better, not just for themselves but for others, it's really unique and amazing. And for me, that's been the most special part of this. And I'm going to miss everybody, and I also feel very happy knowing that the village is in a really, really amazing place. And I'm excited to see where you all are going to take it, because everybody has the talent and the wherewithal and the dedication to roll their sleeves up and keep the momentum going. So thank you for letting me have this privilege, and I'll be very, very satisfied if you all keep taking the ball and moving it down the field, and I'll keep coming back and saying hello and wishing you well. So thank you.
Awesome. Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
No executive session?
I will move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Can I talk to you and Franco for like 3 minutes?
Yeah, Kelly,
Thank you.
call.
Thank you.